Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. So for today's video, I decided we're going to be talking about cards you need before Darkwing Blast and for the format post Darkwing Blast. I did a similar video when it comes to the Power of the Elements format, so I figured it's only suitable with Darkwing Blast very quickly approaching to do the same type of video and sort of point out a couple engines that you might use in some of the best decks that actually get support in Darkwing Blast as well as at the end we're going to be discussing a couple cards that I think are going to be very impactful as main deck or side deck staples and the ones that will fill your flex spots moving forward, and I figured I would sort of bring your attention to those cards as well. So with all of that being said, quickly before we get started, I just want to shout out my patrons: Dudley Reiner, Crimson, Conster, 10, Nude Banner, Jonah Rodriguez, Ariel Kersey, and Roik Air. I'm very much grateful for your support. And if any of you guys want to support me on Patreon, you can always find the link in the description below. So the first couple of things we're going to be discussing is just going to be engines for the Tearlament deck. Tearlament obviously is going to receive support with Tearlament Rule Kalos and a couple spell cards, and there are a couple engines that I think you should be looking into if you're playing Tearlament. The first one, quite an obvious one actually, is going to be Branded in High Spirits together with Albion. So Branded in High Spirits did see play. I think it was at the Oceanics Championship first, if I'm not mistaken, but right now moving forward it's going to be much better because the target for the spell card, which I did put up on the screen so you're able to read its effect, and the target that needs 2500 attack or defense used to be the D3S frog, but right now with Tearlament Rule Kalas coming in Darkwing Blast, this is the actual target for the spell card, so immediately you don't need to play an additional extra deck monster, which can be replaced now with the new Tearlament fusion. And another reason why this engine is going to be great moving forward is because of the Bice deck cards, because they act and react to your Tearlament plays in the graveyard if you control a monster. But if you start with Branded in High Spirits, which usually you will want to start with because it also plays around draw, so if you play it in draw phase, you effectively play around draw and you play around the Bice deck cards as well, on top of playing around Ghost Reaper and Wither Cherries. So you play around 3 cards just with this one card that also has a really good recursion effect. So all in all, I think this engine, on top of you being able to play Albion, which again like draws you a card, nets you even more advantage, I think it's going to be a cool thing to use moving forward. And it's also very useful in the pure Tearlament version, which might be a tiny bit better moving forward because of the amount of people actually running Tearlament, and in a mirror match, the hand trap version is the preferred one, I think, to win, just because it's much easier to disrupt the mirror match with hand traps as opposed to you having to rely on winning the die roll when it comes to the combo variants being paired up in a mirror match. So speaking of combo variants, actually, we can just segue into the next engine that has to do with the Tearlament deck as well. We have the Lunalight engine. Now, Lunalight, I think, is going to be like one of the best engines for the combo variant right now, at least before Ishizu cards drop and the entire Tearlament deck sort of shapes up in a different way again. But what Lunalight cards do is they grant you very easy access to rank 4 plays, which are incredible when it comes to Dweller, when it comes to Dugares, because you're able to revive Spellcanceller, which is a new sort of best target to send with Curious, just because it's very strong and you don't have snow anymore, so you need to be sending something. But the Lunalight version is actually consistent in being able to go into the goddess to actually revive it, whereas when it comes to other combo versions, it's not like you're going to be getting to 2 Xyz monsters in one turn. It's almost impossible, so you would need to choose to go either for Dweller or for the goddess, and at that point you're sort of, if you go for the goddess, it feels like you're overcommitting into that one play, whereas when it comes to the Lunalight variant, you have the option to go into multiple Xyz monsters. Like I said, you're not as reliant on only one of them. And also, like, overall, the Lunalight engine just seems really nice. You're able to play Foolish Burial Goods, which works in tandem not only with the Lunalight spell card or even trap card if you decide to play it, but you also have Sulik. If you maybe already got to the Lunalight engine, the mills become even stronger because of the Lunalight cards, and like naturally just the Lunalight cards grant you so many bodies, so much advantage, much easier link climbing. Just it's a really good time, I think. Like, I think it's honestly a very strong version, at least before we get to the Ishizu stuff. And since we're talking about versions, the last two things actually, one of them is just, you might want to invest into Paleozoic trap cards if you want. They're really cheap for the most part. Like, I'm not sure if there's anything that's expensive. Maybe like super rare versions, but a Paleo engine is basically being played together with Tearlament, and that was a thing like in this current format already, so you might already know a couple things about this, but I just wanted to mention it again to remind you guys if that's the version you would want to play. And then also the last thing when it comes to Tearlaments, you can play the Rainbow Bridge of Salvation together with Crystal Beast, Emerald Turtle, and Foolish Burial Goods, so the Crystal Beast package basically. Now, that's completely unimportant, but I just wanted to mention that the Crystal Beast Turtle is my favorite, probably one of my favorite cards of all time, my favorite Crystal Beast, and I just love the fact that this is the one that's seeing play, obviously, because it's Aqua. So how this small engine works is the Rainbow Bridge is sent with Foolish Burial Goods, and it's able to get you a field spell. It's any field spell, which is kind of insane in its own right. But then you need to play the pseudo brick of Crystal Beast, Emerald Turtle, because you need to search both for a Crystal Beast monster and the field spell. So you get to Perlerino and you get to the Crystal Beast, which is an Aqua for your fusion plays. So together with Foolish Burial Goods, it's actually quite a consistent way to get your combos going. And similarly to the Lunalight version, if you're not sending the engine piece, basically, you're always able to send the Tearlament trap card, which again grants you names and just advantage. It just seems as a good engine, and I don't think either one of those engines is too expensive if you already own a Tearlament deck, so you just might want to invest in those or at least test them online and like decide which version suits you, because with Darkwing Blast you are getting a lot of support for the deck, so I think it's important to sort of decide what the best version is going to be moving forward, because we are getting a lot of events, YCSs, and obviously the regional season started up again. So I think you guys need to be prepared. And since we are on the topic of the best decks, I also wanted to mention Sprite. Sprite Blue always was the most expensive card, and Sprite Elf did go up in price. But I did want to mention that I think Sprite, even though it lost a lot, it still doesn't seem like it's a bad deck. So I guess an idea for you is like, if you don't really want to play Tearlament because it might be a bit too hard of a combo deck, which, let's be honest, like, it's really hard. It's incredibly hard. So if you just want to play a bit more of a chill deck with a less elaborate combos, but that still requires skill for you to be able to control the game and just do correct plays, I think Sprite is a really cool deck to invest into, especially because Blue dropped in price. And if you want to have a deck that is probably not going to be hit anymore, since Ronin Torin did hurt quite a lot, you could invest into this and sort of have a solid option for the next couple of months. Like Tearlament might become even stronger with Ishizu cards, so it's really up to you. I do think it has a lot of potential with Evo Twin cards, with Runic cards, and just with time, you know. I think Sprite right now just needs time to really develop and for people to explore it to the maximum potential it maybe has, like some hidden value that we haven't thought of yet. So I do think it might be a good investment. It's still a bit pricey for a deck that doesn't seem that incredible. So I guess it's just a small idea, just me throwing it out there. Because honestly, instead of that, you could just invest in a very cheap deck, which would be like Methmec, Despia, even Eldritch, like stuff like that, Flunder again. So like you have other options. But I guess I just wanted to mention it if maybe you were like getting into Sprite and then it got hit and then you got a bit scared as to how it's going to evolve moving forward. I do think it's still going to be strong. So if you maybe wanted to play Sprite, I wouldn't say it's exactly a bad idea to do it moving forward. So there's that. And we are staying on topic of decks for a tiny bit longer. I do think you could invest if you want into Labyrinth stuff. It doesn't seem overly expensive. For the most part, things are quite cheap, except for one of the names, either Ariana or Ariana. I'll put it on the screen. But if you want to invest in a deck, again, that's solid. That's a solid option that is receiving support in Darkwing Blast. And in my top 10 cards, I did mention Lady Labyrinth. And I have a very good comment on that video. You might want to check it out about Labyrinth and about its potential with the new card. And just a couple words from my perspective, I think it has a lot of potential. And I do think with the new support, it's going to be even better. So if that's your playstyle, if that's something you're going for, I would definitely invest into this, because with new support, it's always a bit risky. Like, it can happen that things go up in value again. If someone maybe tops with a deck, that can happen at like a YCS, and then like everything just shoots up in price. I think it's what happened with the Rika cards, if I'm not mistaken. So like, if there's a deck like Labyrinth that you maybe like, that you maybe just want to play, I would advise you to invest into it, and then you get the support and you can still continue playing it. So I would say it's a good idea. And then the last thing when it comes to actual decks, I wanted to mention pendulum stuff. It's kind of weird because we don't have Electromite, but I do think if someone does well with Draco Slayers, because the cards do seem like they're really strong, but they might be lacking the entire pendulum strategy is lacking the backbone that used to be Electromite. If someone does well, cards like Beyond the Pendulum, which already started to go up in value, might go even higher. So if you're trying to play pendulums, which I don't think is such a bad idea, like honestly, Draco Slayers were very successful in the OCG, but they do have Electromite. So the first thing that needs to be taken into account is the fact that deck building would be much different here in the TCG. The second thing, pendulum decks struggle with going second a lot. That's kind of like, it's a very unfortunate thing, and it's very hard to play going second, I think. But then we need to think about the fact that, yes, the ban list is going to be in a couple months, so it's not that soon. But if we get something back, I pretty much think everything is going to change. Like, if we get back, not exactly Electromite, but even a couple more cards for pendulums, I think immediately things are going to go up in value. Everyone's going to jump on the pendulum hype train because we like pendulums. And it's just a cool way of playing. It's very different. It's also quite hard to learn to play pendulums really well. So if that's something you're into, if that's something you enjoy, like, it doesn't really need to be competitive at the end of the day. Like, this video could just be a mashup of competitive advice and also advice for you to like get on everything that has to do with pendulum and like get the engines. And I still have, like, if I showed you my stack of pendulum stuff, like, I don't even know how to call it differently, but just everything pendulum. I literally have every single pendulum thing imaginable almost that was played since like 2017, from the Bumbukus to the everything that has to do with actual pendulum magician archetype, everything. Like, I would consider investing into that if you're really into pendulum, pretty much. That's the entire point. So, yeah, I think that would be a good idea. And then for the last 3 cards, I decided to put 3 that I think are going to be staples, either main deck or side deck moving forward. And the first one is going to be Evenly Matched. I think it has a lot of potential. It's very, very strong against tier element decks. It's also very strong against random stuff, because at the end of the day, we don't have the as consistent Toad negates anymore. So it's not that bad going second into a Sprite deck, I think, because boards are a bit more dependent on like an IP Masquerena Disruption, Smashers, which needs to have an appropriate monster on the field. There's multiple things. Like, if they're still going for Toad, at the end of the day, you're just trading. So it's not that bad if you're going for purely going second strategy, which might be something like Sky Striker. I think Evenly in the main deck right now would be quite a good call in Sky Striker, actually. And like, overall, just I think it's a cool side card. With trap decks, they might gain more popularity with people realizing that there's no red reboot anymore, so they just might pick up their trap decks again. Like I said, against tier element, it's also really nice against stuff like Despia, which is very cheap and accessible. So, you have that. What else? Like, there's a couple things, I guess. So I do think it has a lot of applications, and it might be a card worth looking into picking it up if it fits in your side deck or even main deck, like I said, when it comes to something like Sky Striker or just a purely going second strategy. The next one, also on the topic of spell trap cards, is going to be Cosmic Cyclone. Like, there's obviously Mystic Mine, which wasn't hit on the ban list. There's a lot of decks right now have field spells and they have back row like in engine. If you look at Tearlament, if you look at Sprite, if you look at Despia, if you look at Mathmech, if you look at Flunder, like there are so many different decks utilizing back row right now and field spells on top of it. So Cyclone just seems like a really good choice, and not to mention Runic, like Cyclone into a Runic heavy format, which I do think it's going to be because Sprite works so well with Runic, and even Runic with just Mystic Mine and like the deck out version, basically, like Cosmic Cyclone just seems incredible. And I was thinking that it could be a card worth maining moving forward. So if you don't have your copies of Cosmic Cyclone, I would highly suggest you get them. And then the last card I wanted to mention, now this one is like, it's not revolutionary and the other ones weren't either, but it's just Nibiru. I do think that with Sprite falling off, Nibiru is going to gain even more popularity, and it was okay, like it was quite decent in the last format because people realized like, yeah, Gigantic Sprite locks you out, but you either main deck it and you just know that, okay, game 1 against Sprite, it might not be that useful, or you pair it up with another hand trap, or you side deck it and you have it ready for a Tearlament deck which struggles against Nibiru because everybody was just throwing everything on the board with the combo heavy variants. So there's that, and then you just have other decks, you know, that will lose to Nibiru because there's a lot of them in the meta, honestly. And like I said, with Sprite losing popularity and more people picking up Tearlament, like if they're not going to be going for pure variants which don't lose to Nibiru that hard, it is going to be a bit harder to compete against it. Now there is one thing, and I didn't forget about it. The Tearlament's Rule Colors is able to negate Nibiru. But you still need to think about the fact that they might have more than 5 summons before they get to it. Just because it's, you know, Tearlament combos are a bit weird sometimes, so it's not necessary that you are going to be going for Rule Colors very early on. So I do realize it's very situational. You know, like I said, there might be a time where someone just throws everything at the board and you just Nibiru 5 dangers and you're very happy with yourself, and sometimes they make Rule Colors very early on, or they make Gigantic Sprites, so it might be better in the side deck, but I still do think it's a strong card. So you probably have your copies of Nibiru already, but in case you don't, I do think it's a card with a lot of potential moving forward. So yeah, I was thinking very long and hard about this list, and I do think that's pretty much it. That's pretty much everything I wanted to mention. If there's a lot of things that pop up, I might be doing part 2. So please let me know if you like those types of videos, because I love bringing you information, and especially if there's anything that I maybe have missed or you think is really strong moving forward, I always love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below as well. I learn a lot from you. I hear a lot of new things, and it's just very fun for me, and I appreciate the interactions a lot, and I appreciate talking to you guys. So yeah, if there's anything more, please let me know down in the comments as always. And if you like the video, of course, like it, sub to the channel, check out all the social media, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.